Yes, your attendance. We welcome today Liliana Silber. Okay, so let me see. I'm going to read her biodata. Graduated as English teacher at Instituto Superior de Profesorado Paraná with a degree in linguistics at Universidad Nacional del Litoral Santa Fe. Teacher of English grammar, psycholinguistics, general linguistics, introduction to translation and literary translation at Instituto Superior de Profesorado número 8, Almirante Brown, Santa Fe. Since 1971, head of the Translation Education Program from 2000 to 2005, and consequently member of the Consejo Académico at ISP number 8. Worked as consultant with Comisión de Diseño Curricular, Ministerio de Educación, Provincia de Santa Fe, representing the English Teacher Education Program. Has lectured and conducted several workshops at conferences and seminars organized by educational institutions and ASPI on topics such as translation theory, feminism and gender, and second language acquisition. Has published in Lengua, Colegio de Traductores Públicos de la Ciudad de Buenos Aires, and in Escrituras, ISP number 8. In April 2006, was keynote speaker at the 27th Conference on Spanish and Latin American Literature in Context, from Gutenberg to Google. Revisiting the past, Revisioning the Future of Hispanic Literatures and Linguistics, Montclair State University, New Jersey. Welcome, it's a real pleasure for us to have you here, Liliana, and to listen to you.
Thank you very much for this presentation. It sounds astonishing that I have done so very many things, and thank you for having invited me to these conferences. So, as you may have seen, my topic today is translation and gender. Translation and power, some gender issues. I don't know if you can see me, because I want to share the PowerPoint, but I can't see myself.
Yes.
Can you see me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes?
Properly. Right. Yes.
I don't know. Okay. So in the first place, I would like to quote Lawrence Venuti, who in 1998 spoke or refers to what he calls the scandals of translation, which are cultural, economic, and political. In this lecture, I will try to briefly revise what Romantic theories postulate about translation, how post-structuralist thinkers redefined the notion of translation, and finally, though of course this review will neither be exhaustive nor complete, I will try to answer what is at stake for the for gender in the representation of translation. I don't know if you can see my PowerPoint, because I cannot show it.
Not yet.
Are you seeing? Are you
No.
seeing it?
No.
And now?
No.
So what do I have to do?
Sole, please.
So I have to ask for sharing.
Yes. A ver si está Sole.
Estoy acá. Ahí está compartiendo pantalla.
There it is.
Right.
Yes.
So, going back to the scandals of translation, we know that though translation is as old as humanity, it hasn't received the kind of recognition and respect that other cultural professions enjoy. Until recently, translation has always been an almost invisible practice, everywhere around us, forever present, but rarely acknowledged. This eclipse of the translator's task of their decisive mediation between foreign cultures and our own is caused by cultural, political, and institutional factors. I should say that translators do not just translate because they have a flair or a gift for translation, or because they know the source language and the target language, but because, like most professionals, they have made a conscious effort to study and to understand what they are doing when they make the choices they make when they translate. As to the causes that underlie the translator's task, we may mention cultural power. If we think translation as something cultural, it has to do with the connections of translations with language and literary theories, psychoanalysis, colonialism, feminism, and gender theories. But cultural power is dependent on economic power, and economic power, of course, is dependent on political factors. As regards these associations with political power, I would like to refer to copyright laws. But before I devote some minutes to copyright laws, let me tell you that this will be a fragmentary and incomplete analysis. Much remains to be explored and investigated. And I hope this presentation fosters further reading and research, because none of these questions has been completely answered or investigated. Well, as regards copyright laws, we may say that these copyright laws attach automatically to original artistic works. That's to say, a writer, a dramatist, a musician, or a sculptor don't need to register their rights because the copyright attaches automatically to their works. Whereas translations were considered as derivative works or as adaptations based on an original work of authorship. So in most current copyright laws, both in the United States and the United Kingdom, and in most countries of the world, literary translators, and I remind you of the fact that I will be speaking about literary translation. Well, most literary translations or translators work on what is called a work for hire basis, and they receive a flat fee with no percentage of the royalties or subsidiary rights sales. For example, for a periodical publication, a paperback edition, or an option by a film production company. I would like to add that this is one of the reasons why they are poorly paid. And another thing attached to copyright laws is that the royalties extend to 50 years after the author's death. So during that time, nobody can receive any subsidiary rights or any percentage of the royalties. On the other hand, we have another, let's say, new idea which is copyleft, which plays on the word copyright. By a copyleft license, here you have the symbol, we mean that materials can be freely used. It depends on an open source movement which promotes the idea of collaboration. And although it attaches more commonly to software, which, as you know, is being constantly modified, changed by contributors all over the world, it also attaches to translations, who, as I said before, were considered or as derivative works. This also depends, this copyleft depends on a Creative Commons license, by means of which the creator allows others to use their material, and the only requirement is to acknowledge the original creator. As regards romantic theories and translation, the hierarchy of cultural practices that ranks translations lowest is grounded on romantic expressive theories, which distinguish between the authorized copy and the reproduction, that's to say, the translator. Gregory Rabassa, who is a famous Portuguese and Spanish scholar who translated Jorge Amado and Gabriel Garcia Marquez, among others, advocates, and I quote, for the need for new translations every so often while the original text goes on in all its glory. That's to say, the original is eternal, whereas a translation may grow outdated. He says that the original is an unchanging monument of the human imagination, that's to say, of genius. For Gregory Rabassa, a translator's background knowledge, his or her experience and identity are obviously expressed in a translation, and they are present in the words or in the expressions they use, in their preference for certain expressions, in their discourse. However, none of these factors make the translation an original of the same value as the authorized copy. He says that the originality of the translators lies in self-obliteration. That's to say, translators try to be anonymous, and translation is considered a vanishing act. And it is on this factor that translators prefer to be praised. It can be a real achievement. For his part, Valentín García Yebra, another famous Spanish scholar, says that though the number of readers who rely on translations is growing, there are very few who worry about their quality. He adds that this lack of interest is even more noticeable in qualified readers, by which he means literary critics. In general, literary critics devote very few lines to translations, either when they are exceptionally good or when they are extraordinarily bad. In the first case, that's to say, if they are good, they generally add a complimentary note at the end of the translation or a short paragraph saying that the translation reads like the original. Now, when they are bad translations, they have more points and they can point out their deficiencies. Valentín García Yebra refers mostly to literary translations, which are more poorly paid than technical or scientific ones. And these power relations dictate the fact that they are very poorly paid, whereas scientific and technical translations are better paid for reasons which are mainly practical. It would be impossible for science, technology, business, or commerce to progress any further without the help of translations, especially in this globalized area. He emphasizes the romantic view which canonizes the author-creator, and this sort of self-effacement produced in language coincided with a discursive structure, a discursive theory which was common in the late 70s. A translated text is judged successful when it reads fluently, when it gives the appearance that it is not translated, when it transparently reflects the author's intention or personality, or the essential meaning of the source language text. It is the strategy that produces the effect of transparency. And so we have fluent translation strategies. Again, it is power relations that dictate their higher economic value. They are implemented with varying degrees of success, and they require a laborious effect of revision and stylistic refinements. Now, it is undeniable that these fluent translation strategies aim at ignoring or covering the translator's crucial intervention in the foreign text. But at the same time, we can think that he or she actively rewrites it in a different language with the aim of fostering its circulation in a different culture. And it is this very process that results in his or her self-annihilation. And it produces what is called acculturation. That's to say, the translator, in a way, domesticates the foreign text so that it becomes familiar to the foreign language readers.
Mhm.
Now, this is quite unfair because it implicates the translation in ideologies that may place social differences in a different hierarchical relation, depending on race, nation, class, gender, etc. Moreover, not only does these fluent translations, let's say, lead to translations that are readable and therefore more consumable, they are also profitable. So we have power relations revisited. I will move now to another point that has to do with post-structuralism, which is a movement which started in the late 60s and whose main representatives are Derrida and the Man. They set out to state that the binary opposition between the author and the translator is false. And they state that translation does not so much validate literary fame, it creates it. And I quote what Derrida has said: "Neither the foreign text nor the translation is an original semantic unit. Both are derivative and heterogeneous, consisting of diverse linguistic and cultural materials which destabilize signification, making meaning plural and differential." So this plurality that every text exhibits results in a ratio of loss and gain. Derrida postulates that a translation is never quite faithful, but always somewhat free. It never establishes an identity, and it always needs supplements. Therefore, it can never be a transparent representation. On the contrary, it is only an interpretative transformation that exhibits multiple and divided meanings, which replace in turn other multiple and divided meanings. So this point releases a translated text from its subordination to the foreign text and makes it a text in its own right, with connotations, allusions, polysemy, that's to say, with the discourse characteristic of the target language culture. The Man, at the end of the 80s, considers that a text is constrained by the social institutions in which it is produced and consumed, and its constitutive materials, including the other texts that it assimilates and transforms, link it to a particular historical moment. It is these affiliations, he says, that determine translation to function as a cultural political practice. Remember that I said at the beginning that politics has a lot to do with the place that, or the status that translation has in our society. So this cultural political practice is the one that determines which foreign texts are selected for translation and which texts, discursive structures, and translations are canonized or marginalized. Let me tell you that since the Second World War, English language and English language values, in a way, have achieved a kind of global dominance. That's why we speak of English as a lingua franca in this globalized area. And many foreign publishers have translated large numbers of the most varied English language books, emphasizing the global drift towards American hegemony. So this implies that they have actively supported the international expansion of American culture by circulating it in their national cultures. Yet, I could say that in the last 3 decades, this has been changing with the surge of new literatures and the expansion of other national languages and literatures. However, don't be so optimistic, because in a study carried out by Panorama de la Edición Española de Libros in the field of literary publishing, it has been found that the source language of 55.4% of the books translated annually in our country is English. So power revisited again. And we have asymmetries of commerce and culture. it is worth pointing out at this moment that there is a dominance of English academic publishing. You are well aware of the fact that if you want your research or investigation or paper to be well known in academic circles, it has to be published in English. And this has its pros and cons. The advantages are that speakers of language as a first, second, or subsidiary language can keep abreast of the new developments. But the disadvantage is that those local readers who are not readers of English are excluded. Let me tell you that there is a mutual cultural and economic dependence of developing countries on their hegemonic others. Before I explain this word mutual, I would like to show you a couple of tables. In table 1, we have a research carried out about 10 years ago of book publishing by language. And as you can very well see, the number of titles published in English almost doubles the number of books published in Chinese Mandarin. Spanish ranks 4th, and then we have some other languages. But this does not depend on the number of speakers, but on the fact that English has become a lingua franca. And the second table I wanted to share with you was this one that has to do with film and video production by language. This publication appeared in the year 2015. Before the appearance, let's say, or the birth of so very many streaming platforms like Netflix and some others, which have proliferated, let's say, during the pandemics. So going back to my previous idea of mutual, let me tell you that writers in Africa and in India and many other countries that used to belong to the Commonwealth seek approval of the metropolitan intellectuals and editorials, and they prefer to publish with transnational presses instead of with indigenous ones, which generally have budget problems. And on the other hand, British and American publishers do not publish much in Asian, African, or South American languages for a very simple reason. There are not as many readers as there are for readers of English. So it's a question of profitability. So there is a significant trade imbalance, right? Power again. So to make translation visible today is a political gesture, which at once discloses the marginal status that translation has had in many universities because of a nationalistic ideology. Besides, this political gesture forces a revaluation of pedagogical practices because there are many subjects and which depend on translated material. And it should be, this analysis will remain, let's say, narrowly restricted unless it is extended to institutional culture. Oh, I got lost. To other institutional cultural practices like the publishing and reviewing of translated texts, to other dimensions of translation like film subtitling, dubbing, video games, which are so common nowadays, and to other sociological determinations like class, gender, and race. This is briefly what I had to say, what I was able to summarize about translation and power. And so now I will move on to translation and gender studies, which started in Quebec in the late 80s as feminist translation studies. And the purpose of feminist translation studies was to challenge and deconstruct patriarchal language. It was born in Canada, but it quickly spread to Spain and Italy. Among the most well-known scholars, we can mention Barbara Goddard, Sherry Simon, Louis Van Flotto, all of them women and Canadian, and José Santamaría, a man, and he's Spanish, but he publishes in English, of course. This is interesting because not only do they attempt to deconstruct patriarchal language, but also misogynistic language. Now, this started in the late 80s, and some time has gone by in the meantime. So in the 21st century, we can move to Europe, and if we compare those studies by some other studies written by Palucci, Federici, who are Italian, we can see a change, or rather a widening of perspectives. It's not that they are not challenging and trying to deconstruct patriarchal language, but we may wonder if we are dealing today with the same issues as 3 or 4 decades ago, the late 80s, if the gender and translation fields have the same academic or popular presence as 4 decades ago, and the same, and the same geographical boundaries. So gender and translation is a very flexible field. It's in a constant state of change and readjustment. That's why we can speak about academic instability. The gender and translation field has not yet found its definite shape, but on the other hand, it has become recognizable as a discipline. Not only as a discipline, but we may say that it is cross-disciplinary, and its main characteristic is the recognition of women's central role. I was able to find this word cloud by my technological knowledge. As this is a photograph, I couldn't enlarge it or make it clearer. But you can see that it is rather transparent, and maybe you read gender and translation, here translation and gender, traductrices, feminist translator, translatrices. Here we have woman and translating, gender in translation, translating women, gender, sex, and translation. So what can we see here? The growing presence of women in translation studies. Feminism as an essential driving force. We have seen the words traduttrici, traduttrices in Italian, translatrice in English. An unstable relation between gender and translation, and the appearance of sex as complementary to gender. The gender and translation studies is mainly carried on by feminist experimental writers, among whom I can mention Bersianic, Godard, Delot-Vinier-Harwood, von Flotow, Brossard, Bouchard, and many others. But these are the most important scholars. And I say scholars because they are both writers and translators. So they reflect on the translations in Canada, which, as you know, is a bilingual or a diglossic country. These are experimental writers, and they consider that feminist translation is like a crossroads, which has brought together 3 factors. I'm sorry, but I cannot pronounce French, it's very difficult for me, which means writing in the feminine. Also, a second wave of feminism, which combines Anglo-Saxon feminism and French feminism, and a cultural and ideological turn in translation studies, post-structuralism and deconstruction. So we may say that gender and translation field of feminist translation is an interdiscipline, bringing together a number of heterogeneous traditions and terms of art. As regards deconstruction, I can say very briefly that translation can be used to challenge the limits of writing, reading, and identity. And when speaking about post-structuralism, together with second wave feminism, they have contributed to undermine the authority of the writer. They have stimulated their interest in the translator's work. The translator is given the duty to abuse the source text. So they disregard authority And when I say authority, I mean the author, the writer. They have forced translation to become a creative endeavor, and they have demystified patriarchal language, which is full of misogynistic metaphors. By the way, speaking about metaphors, a key work in the creation or in the field of gender and translation is On Metaphors of Translation by Laurie Chamberlain, who wrote it or published it. It's a paper she published in 1988, where she postulates that production is an active activity, whereas reproduction, both of human beings or texts, is only secondary, is passive, and it is a subservient activity. Because it is a secondary activity, it is generally undervalued and underpaid. Historically, reproduction, both of texts and of offsprings, has been women's work. So here we have a difference in value between the original and the reproduction, power relations between the sexes. And we have the traditional gender stereotypes and the famous metaphor, les belles infidèles. That's to say, women, if they are beautiful, they cannot be faithful, okay? So which are the main objectives of gender and translation studies? To begin with, we have a rereading of the traditional misogynist metaphors of translation, an ideological transformation of text, the fact that translators claim a new authority over the source text and the translation, and translation, even though performed by men and women, is considered as feminine, or it creates a female solidarity and genealogy. So we have a new set of metaphors. For example, women as positive forces, or Lito, a very famous scholar and translator herself, speaks about Pandora, which releases a multiplicity of meanings. And Bonflotto, forever present, speaks about metamorphosis, that is, in the form of a female practice, allows for difference, creativity, and interdependence. So we have a gender and translation map, which is a heterogeneous practice based on the use of paratexts. You will find that in these feminist translators, there are lots of interventions by translators in the form of long prefaces, footnotes, italics, woman handling. I will devote some time to 3 of the strategies most commonly used at the end of this presentation. And the translators have the right to intervene in the text. So we may say that the self-effaced or annihilated translator is a thing of the past. He's forever present, and they claim their signature on the translation. The key publications in the gender and translation field are Gender in Translation, Cultural Identity and the Politics of Transmission by Sherry Simon, and Translation and Gender in the Era of Feminism by Luis Bonflotto. But these date back to the late 90s. But as I said before, 3 decades have gone by, and we have that in the 21st century, focus or emphasis has shifted to Europe. So we have a new, maybe a new direction, which in a way contributes to what was done by Canadian or the Quebec translators. I can mention Corbic, I suppose it's pronounced like that, and Wolf, Santa Emilia, who is Spanish, Castro and Ergun, Federici, Luis Bonflotto again, Carmel, and Godajol, Pilar Godajol. As regards Pilar Godajol, she's working with a team of Catalonian translators who are fighting for the recognition of Catalan as a national language. So we can see that there is a rapidly expanding European gender and translation geography, which provides us with a more dynamic panorama and a less fragmentary map, and which shows that there is a synthesis in this European geography, there's a synthesis of literary and non-literary traditions. So we may consider that it is, as I have said, cross-disciplinary or interdisciplinary, involving several areas of research: social linguistics, pragmatics, literary studies, media studies, semiotics, cultural studies, and others. In the new approaches, which are proposed by feminist scholars, it should be pointed out that translating as a feminist implies keeping in mind differences among women, and translating in the feminine implies assuming an anti-dogmatic position. And this implies that attention should be placed not only on the translator or on the author, but also on the reader. So here we move to the ethics of translation, which involves erasing a Eurocentric notion of translation and also an understanding of the geo-socio-political context in which the original texts are produced. So this location, that's to say the place or the country where translations are done, determines social practices, right? And by social practices, I have to mention, for example, their gender, their class, their religion, or their social status. So much so that the translator becomes an interpreter between two socio-political and cultural words. And he has the duty to, they make it clear that translation should leave some signs on the page. So now I will give you some examples for you to see what is it that they are doing. These are some of the practices and strategies used by feminist translators. One of them is supplementing. Let's see what this consists of. Bersianic, who is a feminist writer, wrote Lengua. I haven't been able to find what this means, but I guess that it is a proper name. And Scott wrote an essay on how he translated Bersianic. He said that Bersianic had to adapt her text to English and show how English is sexist. The same, but different. It also constitutes a voluntarist action on the text. Remember that I said that let's say the translator who had vanished is no longer is a notion that is no longer present. It has disappeared. In this book, there are a few lines where the politics of abortion are considered. And Bersianic wrote this, right, in French, and which means the culprit or the guilty one must be punished. As you may know, the article la, both in Spanish and in French, is feminine. And so when Bersianic translated that, she did this. The guilty one must be punished. And she added whether she's a man or a woman. So she has intervened or supplemented the original text. Another strategy used by feminist translators are prefacing and footnoting. As I said before, and I repeat, the self-effacing translator is a thing of the past. And he or she is the author's accomplice, actively participating in the creation of meaning. Let me explain what Godard did. Godard is also a feminist writer and translator. And she translated Nicole Brossard's These Our Mothers. This is the translation into English. In French, I cannot pronounce it, so I won't do it. Godard exhibits her presence in footnotes, woman handling, italics, and so on. She actively participates in the creation of meaning, and as I said, she becomes the author's accomplice with a strong didactic intention. Remember this word, didactic. For example, in her translation of These Our Mothers, she explains puns or word games. Probably you know that the final E is silent in French. So Nicole Brossard, instead of writing this word, wrote this word in order to imply the kind of activities carried out in the laboratory, probably implying that it was only men that worked in laboratories, which is quite an old-fashioned idea, because we know that there are many women working in laboratories. Besides, Goddard adds lots of footnotes, even though Brossard, the author, doesn't even mention this paratext. In her footnotes, Goddard mentions Camus' L'Étranger or Rousseau's Confessions of a Solitary Writer. Another thing she does, for example, whenever the word histoire in French appears, she translates it as his story. And amantes, which is a French word also, is translated as amant hers, with lots of explanations and her interpretations. So you see the overall presence of the translator everywhere. There are also intertexts. In the translation of Ronald Barthes' The Pleasures of the Text, Brossard gives numbers of pages in the English translation of Barthes' text which were not mentioned by Brossard. She makes references to texts by Gertrude Stein, Lucy Rigaray, Mallarmé, and others, and there are lots of translators' notes. So the feminist translation becomes an educational tool. Remember that I mentioned, or I told you to remember, didactic. And here we have educational. What I think, and what I have read, is that both Goddard, Bersianic, and many other feminist writers and translators have chosen their target readership. And their target readership is American feminists. Why is that so? Because in many North American universities, especially in the United States, there are women's studies programs, and they use these translations as textbooks. So that's why we speak of an educational tool or a didactic intention. And the third strategy I would like to explain is hijacking. Here, a literary critic, who is also a translation, attacks Lotbiniere-Harwood, her name is Suzanne, for her interference in Les Gobens, Letters d'un autre, which means letters from another. And I quote, "The translator is so intrusive at times that she all but hijacks the author's work. In the introduction, she tells us that she intends to make her presence felt. To this end, she frequently breaks into Gauvin's work, explaining what Gauvin really meant, and sometimes offering the French equivalent for the English on the page. So she's constantly interfering. So we conclude that there is a decanonization of the writer in the United States, together with a growing fashion for marginal literatures, not only Canadian and Francophone, but also radical lesbian, queer, and LGTB. To tell you the truth, I was surprised when I was downloading the latest papers on translation and manuals of the quantity of papers devoted to exclusively gay translations, lesbian translations, or queer translation. Because, of course, because of this growing fashion and this, let's say, appearance, birth, or recognition of different gender identities, these new gender identities, which are not new, of course, need their voice, so they need translations. So the criticism of this scholar I was telling you about, the criticism of Gavin's book, is that it is an informal textbook on contemporary Quebec culture, and that it has been ideologically corrected or feminized beyond the author's intention. But the Lotbiniere-Harwood didn't remain silent. She responded, and she said that she aimed at a particular readership. the one I mentioned a few minutes ago, and that she worked closely with the author and had her permission to correct the text. So she writes a sort of political declaration, if we may call it like that, by saying that this is in the preface, right? Remember that I mentioned one of the techniques was long prefaces. The Lotbinier Harwood says that Les Gauvin is a feminist, and so am I. But I'm not her. She wrote in the generic masculine, that's to say, she followed the normal grammatical usage in English. And she added, my translation practice is a political activity aimed at making language speak for women. So my signature on a translation means this translation has used every possible translation strategy to make the feminine visible in language, because making the feminine visible in language means making women seen and heard in the world, which is what feminine is all about. This is a political declaration. And for example, whenever the generic masculine Quebecois appeared, she translated in this way, which is pronounced exactly in the same way. Or if Les Gauvin wrote La Victoire de l'Homme, the Lotbinier Harwood translated it as a victory over the elements. You know that in English, we don't have so very many problems of gender, but there are collocations and we say men and women, his and her. Well, the Lotbinier Harwood translated women and men, her and his. So to conclude, this translation and gender studies have given more visibility to women. Women had been reclaiming an authorial space, and undoubtedly they got it, at least in North America, let's say. What is new also is the association of writers and translators. So there is a rereading of the traditional misogynist metaphors about translation. And the gender and translation studies have broken away from the traditional dichotomies between authors and translators. Translators have gained new authority, and they have acquired the status of authors. That's to say, co-creators of meaning. So these are my conclusions. I would like to say that we are living in a moment of transition and transformation for translation studies. And this has also, this should take into account the debate coming from non-European countries. So this new planetary vision of translation is closely connected with a new notion of world literature. So this is what I have prepared for this presentation. So I'm willing to answer your questions or your doubts, and if you want, I can give you my personal opinion. So I thank you for your being here and for listening to what I had to say. So let's see.
Thank you, Liliana. It's a gorgeous lecture, really. It has.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And I would also like to mention Elda, who connected me to you and to the authorities of the Instituto Número 3.
Thank you very much, Liliana. So the mic is open for any questions that you may have. It's been a gorgeous lecture. We have enjoyed it very much. Thank you, Lily. There are no questions yet, but surely there will come some. All this vision of feminism and translation and the new role of the translator within this new minority groups, let's say, because queer translation is not like translating any kind of text. Yes, I think that it has something different. Well, in fact, any genre has a special type of translating. It's not the same to translate a literary play or a literary work than to translate journalistic work, yes?
That's right.
And well, it has to do.
That's
with
why
all
I
these-
emphasized that I was dealing with literary translation.
Yes, of course. It has to do with this new view on no binaries, sex, yes?
Yes.
And it's quite hard for us who have been raised in a dual, yes, dual gender.
Actually, I think that we not only have we been raised in a dual gender identity, but also we have been trained with a romantic theory of translation, where the translator should be invisible.
Yes, of course. The intranslatability of Venuti.
That's right, translator's invisibility. That's
Yes.
right. Or self-obliteration or annihilation, which is such a strong
Yes.
word.
Yes.
Are there any questions or doubts? If not, I will tell you what I think, because I taught literary translations for I don't know how many years. And to tell you the truth, I don't agree with the techniques used by feminist translators. When we translated and corrected our translations with my students, I always advised them not to include so very many footnotes or translator's notes or notes at the end of the chapter, because you are not respecting the reader. The reader doesn't want to be interrupted when he is reading. And all these interventions interrupt his thread, not of thought, but his thread of reading. So this is my personal opinion. Of course, I don't know if I am a feminist. I'm not so revolutionary, and I don't work as a translator. And besides, I think that in a developing country like ours, we cannot give ourselves the luxury of translating in that way, because according to what I have been told by a friend of mine who is a writer, you won't find many editorials who will publish a translator which is, let's say, full of translators' footnotes or long prefaces or political declarations.
No, of course not. No. And
Andrea,
besides,
would you like to say something?
Besides, there are techniques. Oh, Ana Laura was here recently. Besides, there are techniques that we can use, for example, the changing of a preposition or the changing of, well, we recently attended a conference given by some translators, feminist translators that belong to the Colegio de Traductores de Rosario.
Mm-hmm.
And they resorted us with some techniques and some ways of translating feminist texts. The fact is that I'm not sure if we are prepared for that. Yes.
Not yet. I think that not yet.
Hello, I would like to ask a question and comment on something.
Yes, Andrea.
Yeah. Well, I know some publishing agencies that are publishing books using inclusive language. One of them is Ethos. They translated the Little Prince using inclusive language. And there are a lot of like small publishing agencies that they are using inclusive language or trying to translate using a more feminist approach or more equal approach.
I see.
So yeah, I think, and also I talked to in fact I had the opportunity to have a interview with Susana Ibanez, that I guess most of you know.
Yes.
She wrote many novels, but one of them is a novel about a person whose gender is not identified throughout the novel, and that is something that is pretty new for us, but it's a technique that has been used for a long time. So I think in Argentina there are some changes that are I mean, they're slow, but compared to other countries, compared to other countries in Latin America, we are going fast because in other countries it's a little bit more difficult.
Yes, if you speak about Argentina, I suppose that because of the legal recognition of binary or non-binary genders, we are more advanced than other countries in South America, which are a lot more traditional, let's say, or more conservative. But these small publishing companies that you have mentioned also aim at a very specific and reduced readership. So I don't know how long will they be able to survive, I mean, because of financing problems. But it is, changes are slow, but they are inevitable. And sooner or later, whether we like it or not, inclusive language will be used by maybe my grandkids or your children, I don't know. But the question of translation is, as I said, is a political, social, and cultural. And it has to do with the ethics of location. I mean, it has to do with our identity, with our gender, race, religion, if we have any.
Yeah, but this concept of equality and non-binary, a concept of gender is no longer that important. Is something that is happening throughout the world. It's slowly, it's going on. So I think there will be a moment that it's necessary to start writing in terms of binary, in terms of men and women, male or female, because there are many other genders. There are as many genders as people in the world. And this change is taking place. So I know it takes time. I know, especially for people of certain age, it's hard to accommodate yourself to these changes. But it's taking place, and it's a moment to start changing our mindset, I think.
Of course, but it all depends on many factors, and change is inevitable. And as I have said, translation studies are going through a constant state of change and evolution. So translation changes together with cultural identity. And those changes maybe are quick in other cultures, but they are not so quick in our own culture.
Yeah, and also considering that Argentina is very big and heterogeneous. So what's happening in Santa Fe is totally different to what's happening in Buenos Aires, in Salta, and in Tierra del Fuego. So
yes, it has to
which
do
is one of
with
the best things, and also at the end it's something that makes changes more difficult,
Yes, Buenos Aires is a metropolitan capital, let's say, but you can't compare it with what is going on in Salta or in, I don't know, in Puerto Madryn.
Totally different realities.
If you want to succeed, you have to go to Buenos Aires. That's one, and then you have to publish in English, and then you have to translate for an editorial company from Buenos Aires too, because here in Santa Fe we have very little publishing firms.
Yeah, that's why it's so important. I consider it's very important to support the local publishing agencies and libraries and bookshops, and
yes, that's right.
I support local. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea, for asking. Everyone is saying thanks, really interesting. Please, yes, do not forget to register on the attendance link, please. Excellent presentation. It's been a pleasure to listen to my teacher. Thanks, Liliana, says Marina Romero. Yes?
Yes, I remember her.
Okay. Well, I don't know if there are any other messages or if anyone wants to communicate something. No? Okay, so shall we finish?
Okay, so we wait for Elda.
I'm waiting for her. She has not entered the room yet. Elda, are you here? I can't see her. She told me that she was in, but I cannot find her.
No, I can't either.
No, she's not in. Okay, meanwhile, I'm going to read her biodata. Yes. Elda Munch. Elda, please. Where are you? Let's wait a couple of minutes till she enters. Dice que está conectada, pero no está. Paola Esparapani says, very interesting presentation. It has enticed me to know more about this topic. Thank you a lot. Yes.
Thank you.
Bueno, mami, pero dejas una puerta, hace un frío de cagarse, la tipa puerta medio abierta, 3 horas en el patio variando.
Susan.
You should mute your mics.
Well, this happens. It's a live session. Okay. Let's see if she can enter.
Ingresé al link estoy en una computadora, ingresé al link. Las puedo ver y escuchar perfectamente.
Okay, Elda, so you are here. I'm going to read your biodata. Say hello, Elda.
We can't see you, Elda.
Las puedo ver y escuchar perfectamente.
Pero nosotros no te vemos. Habilita el video.
Nosotros no te vemos, Elda. No te vemos en la sala. Habilita el video y el micrófono que está en la parte inferior. Elda, ¿qué nombre tenés como usuario? Ah, quizás sea... Hello, Elda. Ah, there she is. There she is. Okay, I'm going to read Elda's biodata. Elda Munch took her degree as a literary, scientific, and technical translator at the Instituto Superior de Profesorado número 8 Almirante Guillermo Brown in Santa Fe Capital in 1990. She lives in Rosario since 1991. She has worked as a freelance translator for consultancies and private clients in fields such as legal English, marketing, management, oil and gas, cargo transport systems, and freight terminals. From 2005 to 2010, she translated into English Sur, News from the End of the World, a tourism magazine published in Ushuaia, with articles about local and regional topics such as geography, social history, literature, winter sports, accommodation, trips, geology, arts, fishing, cuisine, and many others. Some articles of her own about the first Argentine expeditions to the South Orkney Islands were also published in Sur. In 2008, the magazine was declared of cultural interest by the Puerto Madryn City Council. From 1991 to 1998, she also worked in high schools, high school for adults, tertiary institutes, and Aricana. Then she was called to take part of a translator's team to teach English-Spanish reading comprehension and interpretation of medical texts to health professionals, university teachers, and students. These workshops were organized by the Extension Department, School of Medical Sciences, National University of Rosario. Some years later, with the 20,001 syllabus, the English instrumental area was organized and became one of the subjects of the new curriculum. In 2014, Elda joined the team of an elective subject, el saber médico entre la filosofía y la literatura. And she is actively working in both subjects mentioned before. She has given seminars and workshops about medical discourse at the Translators Association and at PAMI 1 and PAMI 2, Rosario to Health Professionals. Between 2014 and 2018, she taught English to older adults as part of the National Program of University for Older Adults, organized by PAMI and the national universities. During the late 1990s, she joined the Centro de Estudios sobre la Problemática de la Traducción at the School of Letters, School of Humanities and Art, where she starts her research in both direct and reverse literary translation of poetry and prose. Mariana Pineda, Frankenstein, and Hamlet are some of the works she dealt with. Since 1998, she has delivered many lectures about literary translation and medical discourse in academic events in Rosario, Córdoba, and Buenos Aires. Her articles about literary translation, history, and gender have been published in Rosario and in Spain. In 2020, she collaborated with the Argentine Journal of Applied Linguistics as a peer reviewer. In 2011, she was awarded the third prize for her research about the Robledo Puig case at the first Latin American Conference of Forensic Technicians at the School of Medicine, National University of Rosario. In 2014, Elda was awarded a second prize for her research about Mariana Pineda. Her essay was published online, and you have it in the files attached to the classroom. The competition was organized by La Plata University to commemorate the 18th anniversary of Federico García Lorca's visit to Argentina. Some months later, she was awarded the Andrés Bello Prize and assigned full member of the Academia Hispanoamericana de Buenas Letras with its venue in Andalusia. Since 1980s, she regularly takes refreshing courses in language sciences, translation, Sciences of Education, University Teaching, Information and Communication Technologies, Philosophy, Epistemology, Methodology of Research, Psychology, Art, Social Sciences, and Health Sciences as well. She is also a poet and writer, and some of her works have been published in anthologies. Welcome, Elda, my friend. Elda? Hello, Elda? Elda, ya estamos. Bueno, activa el micrófono que está en el panel abajo, fíjate. Quizás no le funciona el micrófono. Ay, pobre.
What about now?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, Elda. Welcome. What a pleasure to hear.
So I was saying that I beg your pardon because it's my first time in Zoom, and besides I'm going through the post-operative or post-operation process after a spine surgery, and it is really painful, and I wasn't able, sorry again, to prepare a PowerPoint. So I will try to do my best. Well, to begin with, my most sincere thanks to you, Liliana Perez, and then something very important too, that this contribution is dedicated to Professor Liliana Silber, who was my literary translation teacher at the Instituto Superior del Profesorado número 8, Almirante Brown, Santa Fe Capital, during the 1980s. Well, my contribution is divided into or organized into 4 parts. The first is the introduction, and in this introduction I give the general context, which by which I start the research. Then the second part is divided into 3 sections, and in this second part, I deal with let me see. I deal with the approach, the philologic approach, then the methodological framework, and the third part is devoted to the historical figure, the Mariana Pineda, the real figure, the real Mariana Pineda. Then the next The next section, the next part, is a brief analysis of a short Mariana speech. Remember that in theater, in English, we use speech, and in Spanish, we say parlamento. Theater has its own features and terminology. And the last part is a debate and conclusion.
Elda,
Yes.
could you please move the camera? Yes, put the camera
Is that better?
a bit lower.
I can do very little. Sorry.
No, we can see you. Ah, there you are.
Okay.
There you are.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have many possibilities here. I'm sorry. Well, this research started in a complete unexpected way in 1995. By then, I was a member of the Andalusian Association of Rosario, and a national event in our city was being organized. Professor Esther Nora Mingorance, in charge of the Culture Subcommittee, asked me to prepare a lecture about Mariana Pineda to be delivered at the women's meeting. Having the Andalusian associations a highly patriarchal culture, and their women, most of them middle-aged, little consciousness about their rights, about the oppression suffered by females during generations and generations all around the world, and silenced by social mandates, it was necessary to introduce some feminist ideas trying to capture their attention in women's issues, and if possible, to make them reflect about their own roles within the associations and in their everyday life. Professor Mingorance gave me a copy of a chapter from Andalusia history by the French historian and Hispanist Claude Buffon, where he just mentions Mariana and her execution by garrote, the Spanish garroteville, in 3 or 5 lines at the most. He refers to the historical context that surrounded the case, so he does not deal directly with the real facts. That was precisely the first key, the historical bias which would appear repeatedly during the first part of this investigation. The second source was the play itself, the play by FGL, Federico García Lorca. But the play was based on the legend rather than on real facts, rather than on real facts themselves. So that was another problem. And the third source were some short total interviews to some members who dared, pay attention to that, who dared to talk about what they knew or had heard about Mariana Pineda. This was the second key. Only a few members dared to talk about the case. Immediately, some questions arise. 1. What had really happened in Granada between 1800 and 1831? 2. Why was there such a fear to talk in late 20th century about the historical process that took place in early 19th century? 3. Who was the real Mariana Pineda? 4. Why is she so relevant within the Andalusian history? 5. Why is her story still silenced? 6. Why Federico based his plays in the legend rather than on real facts? Number 7. Would it be possible, and this is very important, would it be possible to translate into And now comes the second part. a philological approach, the methodological framework, and the historical figure. This part is dedicated, the first two sections are dedicated to methodological aspects. So you know that we need, in any research, we need to give an approach and to work from a given approach, and we must be very careful. It must follow a given method to work. That's why we talk about a methodological framework. Well, the philological approach. Why a philological approach? To carry out the research about MP's case and the play, it was necessary to open several avenues all at the same time. The historical MP hierarchism and the Andalusian context in the early 19th century. 2. The structure of Canadian society in those days and the women's role within that social structure. 3. The early 19th century Spain in the European context and its relationships with the American colonies. 4. FGL biographical studies, his work, its main features, and his incorrection, his political ideological incorrection. 5. Political and ideological similarities between both Spanish historical periods, early 19th century and early 20th century. That's another very important topic. 6. Readings about literary theory, literary criticism, hermeneutic studies to get a better understanding of the play. 7. Readings about traductology and contrastive analysis to consider the traducibility of the play into English. So this made it necessary to develop a research in many different fields of knowledge, such as history, sociology, feminist theory, literary criticism, traductology, FGL biographical and production studies, Spanish-English contrastive studies to give a scientific account about the historical processes and the play in both versions, original and bilingual, from the humanities and the social sciences. At the very beginning, this investigative process resembled an archaeologist's work. Why? The question is why. It was necessary to dig up the evidence, that is, to find old and new, clear, complete, unbiased sources. Again, old and new, clear, complete, and above all, unbiased sources, to reveal other sources, and to rearrange the data. Only in this fashion it would be possible to get a deep, full understanding and interpretation of the different levels in which real facts, processes, legend, literature, translation, women's social mandates, social structure, present-day challenges, our role as language professionals in society, and the stage of development of our profession dynamically interact in a complex network. Now comes the second section, that is the methodological approach, the methodological framework. Our RT investigation is a non-experimental, qualitative, bibliological research based on a corpus made up by the original play in Spanish and the bilingual version, and on a large number of references, over 100 sources, which include books, magazines, newspaper articles, theater scripts, telefilms, short interviews, among others, from the late 19th century, the oldest ones, up to circa 2015, the newest ones. A point can be made as for the opening of several avenues simultaneously. However, as soon as we started our readings, new data, biases, and issues began to emerge. It was necessary to continue our readings while searching new information which may give us a hint about each particular aspect. Those questions we enumerate in our introduction that appeared at the start became the primary hypothesis that led the whole investigative process during these 26 years. Because you know, in any investigative process, you always need hypotheses, primary hypotheses, and from those primary hypotheses, we generally derive second hypothesis, new hypothesis. Now the third part, the third section, the historical figure, that is, who was Mariana Pineda? Who was the real Mariana Pineda? Mariana Pineda was the Andalusian heroine of liberty. Of noble origin, she was executed in 1831 at the age of 27, leaving 2 children and her adoptive mother, a boy of 12 and a little girl of 3 years old. She was a liberal activist who fought for a constitutional monarchy. She helped out both her comrades and those in need. She was also a Mason at a time when women were not allowed in the lodges. And sometime later, after her husband's death, she had 2 lovers, a real scandal for the Granadian conservative society of her day. The legal process by which she was sentenced to death was based on a denunciation, in Spanish, delación. Alguien la delató. She kept absolutely silent during the whole process, even though she was under great pressure and sexual harassment by Pedrosa, the judge. She rejected him over and over again. A large number of women accompanied her to the place of execution to show their pity and respect. And now comes a very special part, the third part, a brief analysis of a short Mariana speech, as I already told you, Parliament. Mariana exaltada. She says, ¿por qué no me lo dijiste? Yo bien que lo sabía, pero nunca se lo quise decir a mi Esperanza. Ahora ya no me importa, mi Esperanza lo ha oído y se ha muerto mirando los ojos de mi Pedro. Yo bordé la bandera por él. Yo he conspirado para vivir y amar su pensamiento propio, más que a mis propios hijos y que a mí misma le quise. ¿Amas la libertad más que a tu Marianita? Pues yo seré la misma libertad que tú adoras. In English, Mariana intensely. Why did you have to tell me? I knew very well, do I have hoped to keep it secret from my heart? Now I no longer care. Your words have ravished me, for my hope died when once I looked in Pedro's eyes. I sewed that flag for him, and my conspiracy was just to live and love his most cherished dream. I loved him more than my children, more than myself. If you love liberty more than your own Mariana, then I will be the liberty that you adore. The original has 4 verses of 14 syllables each, 3 verses of 15 syllables each, a verse of 16 syllables, and another one of 17 syllables. Yes, 17 syllables, it's one. The English version has 4 hendecasyllabic verses. Remember that hendecasyllabic is endecasílabos in Spanish. 4 dodecasyllabic verses and 1 verse of 13 syllables, and rhyme is free in both versions. Translation processes of amplification, compensation, equivalence, modulation, omission, and transposition take place here too. Modulation implies a change in the thinking categories, that is to say, a difference in the way the speaker sees, interprets the extralinguistic reality. Equivalence is a modulation most extreme instance. A statement is substituted by another with a change in both its syntax and semantics, but the statement in target language, in Spanish, lengua meta, implies the same idea. And finally, the fourth part, debate and conclusion. The context described in the introduction made me feel the need to deepen the research, and thus new challenges were to be faced. Being a translator who had taken her studies at an institution of the tertiary level, which depends on the Ministry of Education of Santa Fe Province, the degree obtained was a technical one, not a bachelor's degree. Remember that bachelor degree is what we call here in Argentina licenciatura, the first university degree. By then, the syllabus was made up by 24 subjects distributed in 3 successive academic years, 8 subjects per year. The limitations imposed by the Ministry of Education made a rigid syllabus with some important subjects such as philosophy, epistemology, methodology of research, traductology, and terminology, for instance, completely non-existent, sorry. Therefore, in spite, and this is very important, in spite of all the efforts made by our teachers, the training was mostly empirical rather than theoretical empirical. And believe me, their efforts were really great. Another interesting point to consider is that at present, translation as a field of knowledge does not have its own status as an object of study within the CONICET. Translation is thus considered an auxiliary discipline which gives high marks to all those researchers who translate the classics or other colleagues' works from any scientific area. And to top it all, there are no research programs promoted by the Ministry of Education, and if any, they never include topics related to the foreign languages which could be developed by students, teachers, and graduates from the teaching and translation courses. We translators have a whole universe to conquer if we aspire to state-of-the-art formal training, research and teaching positions and working conditions as well. Thank you very much. I don't know, there are questions, comments.
Thank you, Elda. I'm waiting for messages and questions either here or in chat or in Facebook. Some external noises. Yes.
Yes.
Here, I think clearly.
Yes, I'm not at home. I'm at the Silber. Sorry.
Yes.
That's why you hear lots of noises.
Okay.
Sorry.
But the essence of the conference could be read. Yes, if anyone has any comments or wants to ask something about Mariana Pineda or about Federico Arcile's work, yes, there are plenty of archives in the site, in the classroom, I mean, yes. So you can consult, you can make a revision of the sources that Elda has adopted as resources too.
I can prepare a PowerPoint to send you in during the following weeks. Well, I couldn't do that now because of the surgery, but I could do that in the following weeks to appreciate the contribution from that other source.
Yes, here Ana Laura says, Elda's presentation is a beautiful example of ongoing professional development, overcoming the limitations of our initiative. Yes, I think that's a critical point. Yes.
Thank you very much.
We have not been trained deeply. Yes. Sorry, we have not been trained deeply, I would say, to investigate or to research or go on with the research. Yes, with research.
Yes, I learned it by myself.
Right. And where have you taken the idea of translating Mariana Pineda, analyzing?
Sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Where have you taken the idea, the principal idea of translating this play?
Well, when I first came into contact with the play, I didn't know really that he had written that play. It was his first play, and it was considered mediocre by critics. And well, I said, is it possible to translate into English? Because Federico is the most Andalusian of all writers, but at the same time, he is the most universal. Is it any possibility, or is there any possibility to translate that into English? That was one of my first questions. That was one of the first hypotheses, precisely.
Right, great. And have you found any other version?
No, there is only one. It was sent to me from Spain, and the author is Harvard. His surname is Harvard, and he's a professor at the University of Wales. I think it's the only version. It's excellent. It's an excellent version, really. You feel it. You read that in English and you have the same feelings as when you read it in Spanish. Wonderful. Touching, really.
I don't know if there are any other questions or comments. It's really refreshing. Okay, no comment. Thanks, many thanks by many people. Right? Okay, thank you very much. We give you a virtual applause to Liliana and to Elda. Thank you for.
Thank you very much
for accepting
to you all.
the challenge.
Well, we hope we can repeat this next year, to
Yes.
repeat, to take new challenges.
Yes, of course. Okay, thanks to both Liz and Laura. And now I will finish the session with some words, some ending words. If you please, Elda, could you please close your mic if you're so kind? Yes? Could you please close your mic?
Sorry, are you talking to
There
me?
it is. There it is. Thank you. That's better. Okay, I will finish with some ending words to thank all of you, to thank the speakers. Along these 3 days, we have walked through trembling passages of Holocaust memories brought by Sederman's style perfectly analyzed by Andrea Mazet. We have read and listened to unsteady passages of profound feelings provided by Jornadas by the hand of Mariela Burani's work, and we also have experienced the savory joy of the translation of texts by Andrea and Daniel Colombini. With Perla, we have accounted for some technical aspects of translation training and the translator's competencies, to end today with Liliana Silber's lecture, full of empowerment for women's work and the feminist translation studies, and the analysis of the translator's invisibility. And finally, Elda provided quite an interesting analysis of Federico Garcia Lorca's play, Mariana Pineda. 3 days that reminded us about contemporary English literature, how language can give shape to our feelings and thoughts, and of course, how pleasurable literary translation is. But as everything good, it has come to an end. We finished today with months of preparation, days of uncertainty, and the nervousness of awaiting the day. We hope this has been the initial step for reconsideration of the value of the English language and English literature in the tertiary level, and we sincerely hope this will enhance future English language projects. I want to thank especially my friends for their collaborative work, Cristina Di Giacinti and Alejandra Garrini, with whom all the uploading of information and the preparation of the classroom has been made easier to me. I cannot finish without thanking the authorities of the Institute for giving us the space and the time, to Soledad, who is the coordinator of the Formación Permanente, and to all of you for taking the time to form part of this project. Special thanks go to all the speakers that have acted in this session. Thank you very much to all of you. You will have, thanks Liliana Silber and Elda, says Ingrid. Andrea Pollera says congrats, it was all amazing. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Until next year, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. Maybe face to face.
I wish so. Yes, hopefully. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
See you.
Congratulations. All right, so that's all. Let's hope we can come next year or do it in another place. Yes.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Goodbye.